Okay, who's ready for a spicy video today? So you're thinking about moving to North Georgia. Well, are you ready for this? All right, I said it, it's gonna be spicy. So here's the deal. I do not love talking politics and I don't love to stir up, conflict or strife or anything, but I have been talking to a lot of people who have contacted me from watching these videos, and they have been asking me a lot of questions about what's it like in North Georgia. And I realized people need to know all the reasons not to move to North Georgia so they can make an informed decision before they move across the country or from some other location. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 10 reasons not to move to North Georgia, so stay tuned, it's going to get interesting. Hey, my name is Tim Gibson and I am a local realtor here in North Georgia. My channel is all about living in North Georgia. So of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so I can keep you up to date on everything going on in the area. And if you're thinking about moving out, feel free to reach out, send me an email, send me a text, send me a smoke signal, whatever. I'd be happy to help you out. You want to talk about guns? Let's talk about guns. And just to start it off with a bang, number one, we are going to talk about guns and gun ownership. So if you're wanting to move to an area that does not have a lot of guns or gun ownership, then North Georgia might not be for you. As you well know, Georgia is in the South and North Georgia is mostly rural. Naturally, in this area, gun ownership is huge. And a lot of people in the area, and I say a lot, probably most people, pride themselves on adhering to and enjoying the Second Amendment of the Constitution, which allows for gun ownership. Logistically speaking, if you are living, let's say you live in a small town in North Georgia, you live on 10 acres of land and you're 45 minutes away from the closest town square. Well, if someone is trying to take something of yours, if they're trying to break into your house, they're trying to steal your cars, they're trying to attack your animals or something like that, logistically, you don't have a lot of time to call 911 and sit and wait for the cops to arrive. So naturally, people are going to take matters into their own hands to protect their property and their livelihood and their families. So naturally, a lot of people are using guns for home safety and home defense. I don't know what your stance is on that, and I'm not really going to share mine, but people have very, very strong opinions on this, but that is a practical reason why gun ownership is a large part of life in North Georgia. Georgia has a stand your ground law. So let's just read this law about Georgia's stand your ground. According to Georgia's stand your ground law, a person who uses threats or force relating to the use of force in defense of self, others, habitation, or other property has no duty to retreat and has the right to stand his or her ground and use force, including deadly force. And as you can see here, based on the law, property owners have the right to defend their property with deadly force if necessary. Another major reason there's a lot of guns in North Georgia is hunting. Hunting is a part of life here. People take off of work and school whenever deer hunting season starts. Some people hunt with crossbows and things like that, but hunting with a rifle is very common here. People also use shotguns for turkey hunting, and it's just a part of life. People like to go out and hunt. It's just the way they grew up. They want to go out and they want to shoot their own food and they want to process it themselves and know where it's coming from. So naturally, having some hunting rifles around is part of life in North Georgia. Another reason would be, kind of along the same lines as hunting, is to protect your livestock. Like if you've got chickens or you've got sheep or you've got goats or whatever. Keeping coyotes away. Coyotes are a big deal here and they're kind of all over. So if you're wanting to protect your property or your animals, your livestock from pests or predators, then you can actually take those matters into your own hands and scare off those coyotes or shoot them or whatever. Another thing I wanted to mention is that you can obtain a concealed carry license in Georgia relatively easily. So if people are worried about their safety when they're out and about, you can apply for a concealed carry license. There's a little bit of a process there. Of course, you can't just walk into a store and say, I want one. You have to fill out an application and get a background check and all that stuff. I grew up in the suburbs. I didn't grow up around guns. And I don't know a ton about them, but I do know that gun ownership is very prevalent here, and that's something that you need to know if you're thinking about moving to the area. And the number 2 reason why you would not want to move to North Georgia, another hot button topic, is politics. I know, we're gonna get into it. Look, let's just go for it. And check this map out right here. As you probably have guessed, if you're coming from another area, Georgia is almost a completely red state. Graphic right here shows that most of the counties in Georgia actually voted for Trump in the 2020 election. And the blue sections on this map here are mostly covering the larger cities in Georgia. Of course, Atlanta, you have Augusta down there to the southeast, and then you also have to the southwest there. That's kind of Columbus area. So if you don't want to see Trump flags, you don't want to see Trump merch. I've seen Trump pop-up merch shops like in grocery store parking lots. If that's something that's going to set you off and going to make you really unhappy, then maybe North Georgia is not for you. North Georgia is a very conservative area, and sometimes, I know this is going to be a little wild to hear, but you do still see some Confederate flags flying on pickup trucks. Not as many Confederate flags as I used to see, 20 years ago, but you can still see them every once in a while. Most of North Georgia is comprised of small towns with populations 10,000 or less. So a lot of small town people, a lot of small town living there. All that being said, I've lived here for 20 years, and if you vote Democrat, it's not like you're gonna get attacked in the parking lot for having a Joe Biden sticker on your car or something. People might laugh and make fun of you a little bit, but for the most part, everybody's nice, and they keep all their arguments to Facebook, and that's just endless entertainment right there. So if you just want to waste some time, go on Facebook and watch people argue over politics. It's just a great time. Along those lines, we actually had in Lake Lanier, there was a Trump boat parade. I don't know how many boats were in this parade, but it was thousands upon thousands of boats in a parade in support of Trump. As you can see in these pictures here, it looks like an insane time on Lake Lanier. And I stayed as far away as possible from the water on that day because I knew it was just going to be crazy. Most of North Georgia is rural, so if you are not about living in rural America, small town, not a lot of stuff going on, then North Georgia may not be for you. The running joke around where I live is that we don't have a lot of grocery stores where I live, but there's a Dollar General on every corner. There's probably 10 Dollar Generals where I live, but we don't even really have a proper grocery store. And pickup trucks. There's just, everybody has a truck. And for good reason, a lot of times you got a truck because you got to haul stuff. You live on property and you got to haul some pine straw or whatever. But yeah, you're going to see a lot of pickup trucks in North Georgia. There's a dividing line somewhere north of Atlanta where you see a lot of sedans, you see a lot of Priuses, Teslas, stuff like that. And then somewhere as you creep further north, you go, wow, all I see is pickup trucks. So just be aware of that. And life in the South in general and in North Georgia, you can expect a lot of unhealthy food, and particularly fried food. Look, I love fried food as much as the next guy, okay? And Georgia's most famous restaurant is known for a fried chicken sandwich. Chick-fil-A. I love Chick-fil-A, by the way. If a food has the ability to be fried, we have fried it here. I've tried fried Twinkies, fried Snickers, fried ice cream, fried pickles. I mean, literally, you could try anything fried that you want here. Not that you want to eat that every day. Some of it is unbelievably delicious and some of it is terrible, but just be prepared because you're going to see fried food almost everywhere. And, our version of healthy food is a salad with fried chicken and ranch dressing on it. So take that for what it's worth. And number 5, we are going to talk about the weather. The weather in North Georgia might be a reason why you might not want to move here. And there's a running joke. I've posted this on my social media, and this is the most accurate depiction of North Georgia weather that I could ever come up with. I don't know who came up with this, but I applaud you because this is spot on. I'm gonna run through the 12 seasons of Georgia. First, you have winter. Sounds easy enough, right? Then you have Fool's Spring. Right around February, early March, you get a day in the 60s and you think, all right, the weather's warming up. Not so fast. Then you have second winter, when it drops off from 60 degrees to the next day being, I don't know, maybe in the 20s. Then you have the spring of deception. In the spring of deception, you have another nice warm day and you think, okay, now for real, we're getting into the springtime. Then you get to third winter, my least favorite because I'm ready for the warm weather at that point. This sounds like a horror movie, and it kind of is. It's called the pollinating. And that is when every single plant in the area that you could ever imagine releases every amount of pollen possible into the air. And the pollen is so thick at times that it covers everything that you can see. Your cars, your house, the roads. It looks like snow. It's insane. And if you have allergies, just don't even go outside during the pollinating. Then you have actual spring, and that lasts about 5 minutes. Then you get into summer, and then you get into one of my least favorite times of the year. This is somewhere around August. It's called Hell's Front Porch. And it's hotter than you can imagine. It's in the 90s, usually 90 to 95, upper 90s. And you'll get 80 to 90 to sometimes 100% humidity. Then you go into, very similar to the springtime, you get false fall. And we just had this like last week. False fall is when you get a morning in the 50s to 60s, and during the day you'll get up to maybe low 70s, and you think, yes, finally some cooler weather is on the horizon. And not so fast, because we're in this period right now. It's September 22nd, 2022 right now, and we are in second summer. We had a couple of days in the 50s last week in the mornings, and the temperature for today, the forecast for today is something like 92 degrees. I mean, we're almost in October and it's gonna be 92 degrees. That is the definition of second summer. Then you have actual fall, which lasts for, a couple weeks, and then you go straight into winter and it starts all over again. Another thing about the weather I wanted to mention is snowpocalypse. That happened in 2014 and it was national news, went all over the place. Everybody heard about it. We do not know how to drive in the snow. Georgia doesn't have the infrastructure. We don't have the salt trucks. We don't have snow plows. We don't know what to do whenever any snow touches the ground. So if it snows an inch or 2 inches or a half inch or 6 inches, most people up north, they know how to deal with that. We stay inside. The schools shut down, businesses shut down when it snows in North Georgia. There's actually a funny story from Snowpocalypse, or a story that I remember at least. The Atlanta Braves player, one of the fan favorites, Freddie Freeman, was actually stranded in his car during Snowpocalypse. I think he was on 285, somewhere near Atlanta. And he did not know what to do. He could not get out of his car. He could not get anywhere. I mean, I think there was tens of thousands of cars on the highway at this point. And it was gridlocked and people were stuck in their cars for hours. I think even multiple days. And Atlanta Braves Hall of Famer, another fan favorite, from my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, by the way. He left his house on a four-wheeler, drove through the traffic, the gridlock in Snowpocalypse on his four-wheeler, decked out in hunting gear, picked up Freddie Freeman from his car, drove him back to his house, and saved him. The number 6 reason not to move to North Georgia, allergies. I mentioned them briefly a little earlier during my 12 seasons of Georgia. If you struggle with any kind of allergies, I think all of the allergies are here in North Georgia during the springtime. Like I mentioned earlier, every single plant, tree, grass, anything that grows out of the ground releases all of its pollen into the air. It feels like during a 2-week period of time. And if you struggle with allergies, North Georgia during the springtime is a hellscape of yellow pollen invading your allergies and just knocking you out cold. Zyrtec, or pick your allergy medicine of choice. Keep it stocked, lock yourself in the house, lock yourself in a bunker. It's wild. I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it's absolutely insane. I know of people that have actually moved to different parts of the country to get away from the pollen in North Georgia during the springtime. If you struggle with allergies, you might want to stay away. And the number 7 reason for maybe not wanting to move to North Georgia is friendly people. Yes, I said it. Everybody, for the most part, is friendly in North Georgia. It's very common to drive through your neighborhood and wave at someone that you've never met before, who's driving past you in their car, or maybe to wave at someone who's walking down the street in the sidewalk. Sometimes neighbors just knock on their door and just say hi. It's not as common as it used to be, but that's still a thing. And my most favorite part is when you eat at a restaurant, you've got a waitress coming up to you and calling you sweetie, calling you darling, calling you baby. I personally love it. I think it's fine. I mean, I grew up in the South, so maybe it's just normal to me. I wanted to tell you a story. Cracker Barrel is a Southern restaurant and known for sort of its Southern food and Southern hospitality. I have been to all 50 states. I used to travel for a living. I've been everywhere and I've encountered all different types of people. But what's interesting is I went to a Cracker Barrel one time in New Jersey. And I guess being from the South, I just thought that everyone was going to call you sweetie or darling or whatever. We had our waitress and we sat down and we were talking to her or whatever, and she's like, what do you want to eat? And we were like, is this Cracker Barrel? Wait, what is going on here? And so it was just a little bit of a culture shock for me, because I thought, you know, she's going to be all nice or whatever. And she was fine. She was great. But it wasn't the laying on the Southern hospitality as thick as it usually is. And reason number 8 why you might not want to move to North Georgia is college football. Yes, if you live in New Hampshire or Vermont or Rhode Island, you might not even have thought about college football. But in North Georgia, you are kind of divided by which college football team you cheer for, particularly which Southeastern Conference college football team you cheer for. I grew up in Florida and I'm a Florida Gators fan. And let me tell you, I don't cheer for the Georgia Bulldogs, and people look at me like I am from outer space when I tell them that. They just won the national championship this last year and I have not heard the end of it. But hey, that's cool. It basically has a lot to do with where you were born. So if you're born in Florida, you're likely going to be a Florida fan, Florida State fan. You know, Alabama, you're either going to be an Auburn fan or an Alabama fan. The list goes on, but people are very, very loyal to their college football teams, and people schedule their lives around football season and what time their team is playing on Saturday. So get used to that if you're thinking about moving to North Georgia. Okay, reason number 9 that you might not want to move to North Georgia is Southern accents. I will tell you, I grew up in the South, like I've mentioned before, and I probably have a Southern accent compared to some of you out there. But I have talked to people in North Georgia particularly that are so Southern that they sound Australian. So if you've ever seen the movie Crocodile Dundee, which is a movie about an Australian guy, think about that for a second. I'm pretty good at interpreting Southern accents, but sometimes I'm like, man, I don't even know if you're speaking English right now. So that's a thing. And you know, some people do talk slower. So if you're coming from like New York or something, or some place where people talk really fast, and you got a good old country person just talking real slow and calling you baby and all the stuff, you might be like, get to the point. But hey, that's just the way it is down here. And you know, you just got to get used to a little bit slower pace of life and some accents that just sound like they're not even real. And the number 10 reason why you might not want to move to North Georgia is that real estate prices are really high. Yes, I said that right. Now, all that to say, real estate prices are relatively high for our area, but if you're coming from somewhere like Southern California, you're coming from Washington State, you're coming from Washington, D.C., you're coming from New York, someplace up north, Chicago, relatively, our prices are dirt cheap compared to some of those more expensive parts of the country. But I want to show you this chart to give you an idea of how much prices have increased over the past 5 years in just a couple of select counties in North Georgia. Let me just give you a couple of stats real quick to show you what the price increases have looked like over the past 5 years in these 3 counties. First of all, we'll start with Lumpkin County. And 5 years ago, the average sale price was around $167,000, which doesn't even sound like real life. And it's jumped about $220,000 to the average sale price being around $387,000, and I expect that to increase in the future, of course. On this green line here, you can see Dawson County. Dawson County, about 5 years ago, the average sale price was around $286,000, and over the past 5 years, Dawson County has gone crazy, and it's still going crazy. It's blowing up. The average sale price, as you can see right here, is around $627,000. Which, if you're coming from Southern California, like, hey, no big deal, that's not that expensive. But for us, $627,000, that's pretty high end. Another North Georgia county is Hall County, which has Gainesville and some of those other towns. And lastly, Hall County, about 5 years ago, the average sale price was around $258,000. And most recently, the average sale price in Hall County went up to about $486,000. So as you can see, some of these have doubled or even tripled in value, and the prices are just getting crazier because a lot of people are coming in from all over the country. All right, we've talked about guns, we've talked about politics and everything else. And if you are still thinking about moving to North Georgia, of course, give me a call, send me an email, send me a text. I covered a lot of fun topics, a lot of hot button topics, so I wouldn't be surprised if we got a lot of comments below. But if there's anything I didn't cover that you want to talk about or want some more information on, please let me know. Have a great day, and we will see you on the next video.